My name is Ethan Becker, and I'm the president and I guess you'd say chief designer of Becker Knife Tool. And I was very lucky a couple years ago to run across the only known Kephart knife outside the museum at Western North Carolina University. I saw the knife and I wasn't very impressed with it. And my good friend Mark Zaleski, who runs Knife Magazine, happened to own it. So Mark, being sneaky and a very good salesman, came over to my house one night and he happened to bring that knife with him. And he let me cut something with it. And I went, oh, well, there's something very interesting here. So part of it was hanging out with Mark. He has all these antique Bowies and stuff, and he's more of a collector than a user, and occasionally he likes to give them to a user to find out what they're like. Well, I just looked at Mark and I said, okay, what's it going to take for me to own this? So money changed hands, and I also, for some of the money, I took him down into my sanctum sanctorum of my knife collection, and I said, okay, you go through the collection and you make a pile. And if I have an emotional attachment to the knife, it doesn't go in the pile. But if I don't have an emotional attachment, it goes in the pile, and you tell me when the pile's big enough. There are very few people in the world I would let do that. So having gotten a knife, being as I've been in the business of making or causing knives to be made for the last 35 years or so, I started thinking about trying to get Kephart to make a version of the knife. And took it to Blade Show. People went crazy, just like I did. And actually, Joe Flowers was so excited that he caused the president of Kephart to look at me and say, okay, we need to make that knife. And it was Joe's enthusiasm that put the project over the top. And anybody who knows Joe knows that he's a very enthusiastic man, which is putting it mildly. So the Kephart version is made from virtually the same steel that the original was, which is 1095. And this is a custom version, which is made by Dan Eastland at Dogwood Custom Knives. And it is ground pretty much the same way the original was, which is to say that it's convexed 2/3 of the way up the blade, and then it's convexed toward the spine, and then there is a spine proper, which is relieved slightly. And what that relief does is to allow the knife to come back out of the whatever the medium is. But the double convex is very cool because it makes a kind of a fulcrum here. So as you're going into things and you're getting a little bit too deep a bite, it allows you to adjust the angle of attack. And Kephart he knew stuff. I had one of my machetes blew up on a guy up in British Columbia, up in Vancouver. And so I called because one of my knives breaks, I want to know what happened and why. So I'm talking to him and I said, what were you doing and all that stuff. I mean, there's no doubt he was going to get a new blade, but I wanted to know because if there was something we could do to make it better, that's fine. So he said, I don't know, Mr. Becker. He said, I was cutting through hemlock, which is a softwood, and it just blew up, and big, nasty conchoidal fractures out of it. So I'm not thinking about this. The next 2 days later, I'm reading through Kephart, and he says, whatever you do, keep your axe out of hemlock knots because they're full of silica and they'll blow up your axe. And I'm thinking, I had a brand new plumb axe 25 years before. First thing I cut with it was a hemlock tree, and it took 1/3 of the face of the axe off. And I'm like, what doesn't Kephart know? And this knife represents what he saw. He designed this knife in the 1890s, and it represented everything he thought a knife ought to be, and he knew a lot. It's about the right length, according to modern bushcraft. What's it? It's the double convex is great, but even the K-bar one, which has a regular is a full flat grind,
Yeah.
is a wonderful blade. And to me it's been a real honor to do it, because I didn't get permission exactly from Libby Kephart Hargrave, but I did talk to her, and she was ecstatic that I was trying to continue to, I guess, worship Horace Kephart. Doesn't come, and I can go there because he was so good at what he did, so good. So anyway, if you want the closest representation you can get, talk to Mike McCarter in Knoxville at Mountain House Blades, or Dan at Dogwood. And if you want something that's as close as that can get that a factory can make, then check the K-bar people, because their version is a nice knife. A nice knife.